So true.
I keep hearing this word, fascism.
Fascism. Fascism.
Fascism.
Fascism. Fascism.
And I have a confession to make, which is I don't totally understand it. I feel kind of naive.
Most people don't, actually, believe it or not.
When I think of fascism, I think of World War II. I think of the Nazi regime committing some of the most horrendous atrocities in human history. I think of their ally, Italy. But fascist has also become this generic insult that people use in politics.
A weird kind of arbitrary fascism.
This is what fascist leaders do.
She's a Marxist, communist, fascist.
Reject Donald Trump's fascism. They're the ones acting like actual fascists.
Look up the definition of fascism.
But it's also used as an insult.
I think Trump's way of dealing with Mom Donnie is really funny, actually. I think it's like pretty effective too. Just the fact that anytime anybody ever talks about Mom Donnie, he instantly just goes, "My good friend Mom Donnie." Like the fact that he just like he's making him look corrupt by proxy, you know, because he's like running on this like, I'm an Indian and I am a socialist and I'm for brown people and I hate white people and I love socialism, communism, right? And then Trump just keeps going like, he's my good friend, I love him, we've been hanging out, you know.
Things that have nothing to do with politics.
This guy's being a total fascist.
Free expression, not fascist moves.
What kind of a fascist hash foundry are you running here?
But lately, I'm hearing the word used more seriously.
Fascism.
Experts, historians, scholars, some
Retards.
of them are warning that we are seeing the rise of fascism again.
Whoa.
Are we?
Bro's got a lot of picture books.
This took us deeper than expected, deeper than I can remember going on a video in a long time, into books and documents and speeches, deep into the research and scholarship on fascism and its history. And we got to talk to a whole range of top experts on fascism, people who know a lot about this, but don't actually agree with each other on everything.
I'm an historian of fascism, populism.
Stein. Federico Finkelstein.
And dictatorships.
The question is fascism real and abroad in the
Timothy Snyder.
world?
It's very important not to abuse the concept.
To be a fully fledged fascist, you need a vision of an alternative political system.
A quick note about what I'm trying to do here. I am not the person to give you the correct interpretation of fascism. What I can promise you is clarity. Clarity on the story of fascism, on the features of fascist regimes. And my hope is that that clarity arms you with the tools you need to evaluate what's happening today for yourself. And I hope to hear from you in the comments to have a good faith, respectful debate about how you interpret all of this. But before you comment, let me show you what I've learned. What is fascism? How do we define it? And how do we start to evaluate if it's happening again today? There's a handful of countries.
Hey, Lamonte.
01 just gifted 5 subscriptions on Kick.
Boom, 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 boom. Lamonte, we love you, big guy. Boom. Who'd you give subs to? Just random. Linux Max, Brawwinkle, Mikey Monet, Chief Groip and Eagle, and Versaki. Well, if you ever have any problems with those guys, just tell me and I'll kill them for you.
That have had what
Get them right out of here. I'll get them right out of here.
Scholars might call some kind of fascist regime over the years. But in the research we did, it has become clear that to really understand fascism, you have to go into its source code, the root of it, how it started, how it became so successful. So we are going to focus in on these 25 years, the years between the two big wars. And specifically, we're going to focus on these two men.
Nice.
Before the First World War, it's an age of extraordinary technological achievement. You get this extraordinary explosion of transport, trains and cars.
It was a time of mind-bending new machines that were rewriting the rules of life itself faster than anyone was ready for. It promised everything, but soon it threatened to destroy everything too.
In 1914, you get this horrific First World War with absolute carnage, millions dying, millions. New mass-produced ways of killing lots of people, like machine guns and dropping bombs, etc. And trench warfare is horrendous.
In these 4 violent years, societies were ripped apart. Italy was actually on the winning side, but their allies had promised them all sorts of territorial gains that didn't actually pan out. Italy felt cheated. They lost hundreds of thousands of men. It was, in their words, a mutilated victory, a bad deal, but not as bad of a deal as the losers got, especially Germany, who lost over 2 million soldiers.
Who is this for? This is for people who didn't pay attention in history class, basically, and are retarded and illiterate. So, like, really, like, 80% of the kids coming out of the public school system.
500,000 civilians, 13% of their territory, which contained 10% of their population. Add to this the money that they borrowed to fight this war that they now had to pay back. A tremendous amount of debt. And on top of all of this, the peace deal required them to pay back the victors for this war. $500 billion in today's money, something that they actually just recently finished paying off, which led them to borrow more money.
I kind of don't like this narrative. The defeat in the First World War, I feel like, is relevant to the political landscape at the time, which allowed for fascism to spawn, you know? But the reason that I feel like it spawned wasn't out of, you know, like they always want to be like, okay, and then Hitler, you know, and then Germany lost World War I, and they all got so mad they decided to be evil, you know? But it's not that. It's like, then Germany lost World War I, and they hated the government, right? And the entire legitimacy of the state was now at question, right? And the same exact thing happened in Italy, where it's like, you know, they won World War I, but weren't able to negotiate properly. They weren't able to actually get the claims. It was a horrible war for them that they really hated, and they lost a lot of people, and the government failed them once again, you know? So I really, I don't like the start of this already, because it falls in line with this very like middle school understanding of like, and then they lost a war, and then everybody was evil because they were so mad about losing, you know? Like there's a reason that Germany also had a communist revolution. There's reason that there was socialist uprisings all across Italy. It wasn't exactly a very peaceful time, and the reason it wasn't a very peaceful time is because the legitimacy of the governments had been completely destroyed in both cases. The legitimacy of the French government, too, had been completely destroyed, and nobody wants to really, like, acknowledge that. Why did France capitulate so quickly? It's because they didn't have any belief in their government. Like, that's sort of, like, really what was going on, is that, like, kind of like now, you know, unironically, you know, to a lesser degree, but like right now, you know, there's really like no legitimacy to our government whatsoever. But obviously it's vastly different because times aren't as bad as they were for these countries at that time, you know? We have like way more comfort and consumerism like still active in our lives. We're not actually being genuinely affected in the same degree as they were back then. But like, you know, if you can kind of understand where like the average person doesn't believe that the government is qualified or capable. They don't want more of the establishment, same old, you know? So it allows for different, you know, like marginalized political movements to start gaining traction in opposition to the establishment, you know?
I mean, it was terrible. It scrambled.
But it's not just like, I'm so fucking mad. I'm a Hitler Nazi now.
This once very advanced, thriving economy, their money lost 99.9999999% of its value. It's wheelbarrows full of cash and an economy in crisis that creates a sense of widespread anger and resentment and humiliation among these people.
Yeah, see, okay, so we're doing this narrative. I read 7,000 books and I spoke to the top historians. Basically, everyone was so mad they became evil.
So, Italy and Germany, they're both feeling cheated and angry. And like a lot of Europe, they're in a sort of a fork in the road with their government. They're figuring out what kind of society they want to have. Italy still had a king, but they were also doing democracy. They had a parliament. Germany had parliament and voting. Women could vote in Germany. They had individual rights enshrined in law. But these democracies were fragile, and increasingly they were in crisis.
Why?
So people start wondering if they need to rethink the system entirely.
It is that sense of total breakdown which generated extraordinary enthusiasm about the possibility of a new socialist communist world or a new ultranationalist racist world.
One rising option in people's minds was to do what workers, soldiers, and peasants had just done in Russia. Led by a revolutionary named Vladimir Lenin, Russians had just overthrown their government, promising a new way, communism, where land and industry would be seized from the elites and put under the control of the people, the workers, the peasants. At least that was the idea. This revolution would create the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union would eventually become a brutal dictatorship that would kill millions of its own people, but that's not what this video is about. And anyway, not yet. For now, right after World War I, this communist revolution in Russia...
I mean, that's the exact same thing that was happening to Russia, but they never sell the story like that. You know, they never sell the story like... And then Russia lost World War I, which they did, and people forget about. They signed a separate peace with Germany because it was so fucked up and they had a civil war going on. But they were never like, oh, well, then Russia was so mad about how bad at war that they were that they just got angry and evil and they decided to be communists, you know? Like, the damage, obviously, and this is the story that is always told about Russia, is that the damage of the First World War to Russia was damage to the legitimacy of the monarchy and to the government, right? That everybody started saying to themselves, hey, our Nicholas is a fucking idiot. The king is an idiot. The Tsar is an idiot. We're living like peasants. We're getting gunned down by fucking Germans. It's horrific. Why are we even in this war? We're in this war for Serbia. This fucking sucks. I don't even like Serbia. I can't point out Serbia on a map because I'm an illiterate fucking serf. You know what I mean? Why don't we just like overthrow the government instead, and we can have like a good system that's actually legitimate rather than whatever the hell is going on here, you know? And that matters more than the specific ideology that's coming to rise up, I think.
Is looking like a desirable option to some of these reeling countries.
They were very rational and realized communism made sense, but people became fascists because they were rationally butthurt. Yeah, that's real. Basically, I'm in middle school and this is deep. I'm glad that I have an education now.
That inspired a lot of extremist Marxists to believe that they were on the verge of causing a revolution in their country.
So this was one revolution on offer. And more people in Italy and Germany start embracing communism. They're going on strike, they're occupying factories. But communism wasn't the only revolutionary idea promising a solution to this post-war misery. And that's where we're gonna turn to this guy. Benito Mussolini. Mussolini will one day be Italy's fascist dictator. But not yet. His path to power is going to have to pass through some very important steps. And for that, we made something. We're going to use this to track the rise of Mussolini and Hitler, because these steps can help teach us
42 cents. That's way too much thinking. Was the old guy in his basement said that people just decided one day to either be communist and cool or extreme nationalist and evil racist.
Okay, sorry. No, that's real. I didn't know that the top historian on fascism said that.
How fascism operates. Before World War I, Mussolini was a rising star in Italian socialism.
I also think that this is so, like, childish, you know? Origins, violence, acceptance, power, absolute power! Okay, name a like, a peaceful revolution. Could you name me a peaceful revolution for me? Could you name me one revolutionary movement, and I mean a truly revolutionary movement, not the glorious revolution in England. Name a truly revolutionary movement which gains power, and we can't throw them into this category, regardless of what they are. Origins. Whoa, Leninism originated with Karl Marx in the late 1800s. Violence with the October Rebellion, you know, wow, they like revolutionized the working class against the freaking people, dude. They began getting accepted and legitimized, then they gained power. Like, this is nothing. Origins. Whoa, in 1763, following the 7 Years' War in America, the French and Indian War, the elites in the Americas, the colonial elites began to realize that perhaps the British Empire wasn't undefeatable, and that actually they were being viewed as second-class citizens and taxed too much, and they weren't even being given representation. Violence outbroke at Lexington and Concord when violent, evil, fascist revolutionaries started violently attacking their beautiful British soldiers. Wow, acceptance. They started calling themselves loyalists as a way to cynically sell themselves to the people of America. They cynically called themselves loyalists and patriots. Wow. And the colonies started to view themselves as distinct and separate, and it added legitimacy to the so-called Continental Army, and they gained power through their Continental Conventions, and then they got absolute power after they forced Britain to capitulate. Like, dude, you can do this to anything. This is stupid. This is for fucking children, man. Are you kidding me? This is useful to nobody. It's just like, if you want to say that something's evil, you kind of can if you use broad enough categories and you teach it like I'm 3 years old and I don't know what the hell's going on.
Steps can help teach us how fascism operates.
Whoa.
Before World War I, Mussolini was a rising star in Italian socialism. He ran an Italian socialist paper. He advocated for workers' rights. But once World War I started, Mussolini breaks with the socialists because he thinks that Italy should join the war, and the socialists are firmly anti-war. So they kick him out of the party, and this is where he pivots hard. He starts his own pro-war nationalist newspaper, all about pride and sacrifice and putting the nation above class struggle. Italy does enter World War I, and the 32-year-old Mussolini enlists to go fight. He gets wounded in a training exercise, and he comes home from the war even more resolved in his vision of a strong Italy, but now with a new set of beliefs that he gained while in the trenches. And
Whoa. Am I crazy? Yeah. Mussolini reached the rank of corporal in the 11th Regiment. He served on the front lines, was wounded by a grenade, and subsequently discharged. He initially... That's crazy. Yeah, but he was on the front lines. That's crazy.
he starts to share his beliefs. He starts a club with a small group of other guys, a lot of them ex-soldiers like him. Men who also feel humiliated and are looking for someone to blame. And he tells them that Italy's problems are not only because of the war and the betrayal from their so-called allies, that mutilated victory, but also because of what's happening inside Italy itself, where all of these isms are poisoning the country. Communism and socialism were threatening to transform Italy with these worker revolutions. And even democracy itself, or liberalism, was to blame for all of these problems. Italy's democracy had, in his words, gone drunk with compromise. They couldn't get anything meaningfully done because they're accommodating all these different viewpoints. He says, guys, this is Italy. We're the historic home of the Roman Empire, the foundation of Western society, and now we've been betrayed and humiliated. But Mussolini says that he has a solution. He says that Italy must be ruled by men who had just fought in this traumatizing industrial war, men who had been purified by violence and sacrifice and discipline. In his eyes, these were a new kind of man, a new kind of elite, created not by aristocratic birth, but by combat. And now these veterans had an obligation to replace the weak, entitled elites that had been created by liberal democracy, and to replace it with a, quote, trenchocracy, the aristocracy of the trenches. So this is like our origin story here. It's the spring of 1919 in Milan, Italy, not even a year after World War I has ended. And Mussolini is rallying his club of ex-soldiers and sympathizers, telling them that violence is actually sacred. It's a stamp of nobility.
fascism always involved violence and the militarization of politics. Violence is glorified. Violence is presented as what makes men men.
This is about men being aggressive, violent, dominant, and strong, and that's a good thing. That's the key to restoring the greatness of the nation, not the soft, weak intellectuals that democracy had created. And for his new group, Mussolini adopts this symbol. It's a symbol that had been used way back in ancient Rome, and many times over the years, including in the French Revolution. You see this in the American Capitol building as a symbol of unity and order.
Hydra.
A stick by itself can be a weapon, but it's also easily broken. But gather many sticks into a uniform bundle, or a fascio in Italian, and suddenly it's a lot harder to break. Add an axe to this bundle, and you have a kind of indestructible tool of punishment. Mussolini is telling his listeners that under his direction of trenchocracy, Italians must become a unified bundle, a fascio, fascismo, fascism. Learning the origins of this word has been really useful for me to approach this whole story with curiosity. Curiosity is the antidote. Listen, every story that I'm doing, fascism begins as a nationalist movement founded by a bunch of war veterans set on restoring Italy's greatness. And they glorify violence.
Make it great again.
As the key to making this happen. What should be the focus of their violence? Well, Mussolini's former friends.
One of the key aspects of fascism is crushing the socialists.
They start hunting for socialists and communists, arriving to their meetings, smashing their printing presses, beating up the leaders of these worker strikes and protests, and more Italian men, many of them fellow veterans, join. These violent squads, or squadristi, eventually get a new name, the Black Shirts, a group somewhere between a gang of street thugs and a private militia. And soon their ranks swell to 250,000 people. Their acts of violence escalate. Soon they're raiding and burning down headquarters of the socialist and communist movements. They destroy the office of the socialist newspaper that Mussolini once had been the editor for. They even murder Socialist Party members. And the violence includes humiliation. They would routinely kidnap their enemies and force feed them huge amounts of laxatives. Like, just brutal.
The American revolutionaries would often capture their enemies and throw them into a vat of hot tar and cover them in feathers.
This is a book from while all of this is happening.
Scary music. Sorry, I needed scary music while I said that. Sorry, did that not have the impact of scary music? One sec. Wait. The American revolutionaries would often kidnap the British subjects that they hated for no reason and lather them in steaming, burning hot tar that would meld and mutilate their skin and throw feathers on them and parade them around in the streets on a chair. They'd call it tarring and feathering, these evil bastards.
20 fascists arrive in a lorry, they attack a club, beat the workers, and set the place on fire. Fascists assault a funeral party, make their way into a cafe, and seriously wound an employee by stabbing him in the chest. A band of fascists, who are armed and masked, attack several citizens, including socialists, left on the ground senseless.
It was based, it was funny. It's called It's Being Funny, dude. It's called It Was a Funny Joke. It's called It's a Funny Joke, dude. It was a bit, okay? Don't get so serious.
Ever heard of tarring and feathering? This was the ultimate public humiliation, medieval style. Imagine being covered in hot tar, rolled in feathers, and paraded through town. Here's how it worked. Strip the victim. Pour on hot tar. Add feathers. Public shaming. Complete. It wasn't just about pain. It was about humiliation. The goal? To shame someone so badly they'd never show their face in public again. Plus, it sent a message. Don't mess with the mob. Like and subscribe for more history facts.
Tarring and feathering, a medieval version of public justice, involved stripping someone down, coating them in sticky wood tar, and adding a feather garnish. This odd punishment trended in feudal Europe. early American colonies and the wild frontiers. From 1766 to 7.
Isn't that crazy though? Dude, you hear about this as a kid and it doesn't sound as hardcore as it is. But it's pretty hardcore. It's pretty hardcore.
And who may you be, sir?
John Hancock, ship owner.
John Hancock. Yeah!
Not John Hancock, smuggler.
Watch your words, sir. I'm an honest man being strangled by monopoly.
True!
Shame on you, sir!
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Shame. Get him! It's Sam Adams. The beer guy. Hey, Federalist Bros, that's your dude? That's your dude soying out? Oh, that's bribery! Wow, press 2, press 2! No, everybody press 2!
A brutal and illegal act to enforce a political principle, sir!
Wow, this is illegal, wow!
Answer me that, can you?
Yeah. Shouldn't have been trying to tax me, dude.
And bleeding. Setting fire to a socialist headquarters, burning banners and furniture, attack a socialist cooperative. A doctor is beaten by fascists. A socialist lawyer is beaten by fascists. Workers are taken to the hospital having been beaten by fascists. Strikes a 10-year-old child who is singing the red flag. You get the point. These guys were all over the country committing really heinous acts of violence.
Fascists believe that violence is the source of power, and that source of power increases when violence is unleashed.
Like, how are they getting away with all this stuff? They don't actually control the country. They aren't an army. They aren't the police. They're just a bunch of angry men committing violence on behalf of this ultra-nationalist group. So why is no one stopping them? Like, where is the government in all of this? Well, that's the thing. Italy's democratic government at the time is divided and weak. And the people who did have power in the country were actually kind of okay with what Mussolini and his thugs were doing. And here I'm talking about the rich people who, like Mussolini, hate communists. Remember the communist revolution? They're threatening to take away their wealth and distribute it to the workers. These business elites are terrified.
Some members of the ruling group saying, should we fool around with and try and, think about a fascist way to resolve these problems?
So these land and business owners actually start funding Mussolini's black shirts. Over and over, the black shirts are even hired to break up strikes and to beat up striking workers.
The first mission of fascism is to crush anti-capitalist resistance from the working classes from below.
So the rich people are letting it happen. They're funding it. Okay, but what about the army and the police? Well, Turns out many among their ranks are actually fascist sympathizers. Like Mussolini is talking to these guys. He's appealing to these guys. Even though his tactics of violence are quite extreme, more and more of the population is realizing they like the fascist vision of what Italy should be, including the way the fascists punish their enemies. And then something happens that changes everything.
I genuinely like kind of feel like this is more applicable to the American left than the American right now. You know what I mean? Like if we're literally just taking this who is willing to be violent and show up in mass and occupy spaces in public, right? Antifa, right? So if Antifa is the current fascist, not to go too boomer here, right? But if Antifa is like the stand-in for the previous fascists, they're showing up, they're occupying spaces, they're shutting everything down, they're making their needs be known, they're getting funded by the hyper-capitalists, right? Which they literally are through these NGOs and through all this other stuff, which has been proven. They're getting funded by them. They're getting set up. And why is it? It's because they don't get taken seriously by the hyper-capitalists. They know that they can control the outcome and they can deploy these people to shut things down and cause mayhem when they want mayhem to be caused, you know? And they're sort of gaining acceptance in a similar way. Like they shoot Charlie Kirk, they do violence to people on streets. In France, they just had some fascists, quote unquote, get beaten to death by a bunch of Antifa types. And the general population of like left-wing libtards are on their side, and they actually think that the violence is in fact justified against people like Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump or whoever, you know? So what do you see any sort of mass right-wing violence? No. Why? Because the rich people, this hyper-capitalists, they hate fascists. They hate right-wing ultra-nationalists way more than they hate socialists or communists, you know? Because they know that at the end of the day, the commies, you know, you can just lie to them. They're the useful idiots, you know? And in this case, the rich people ended up getting eaten by their useful idiots.
Socialists and communists are gaining some traction in the parliament. And the prime minister, who's like a centrist, doesn't want to invite them into his coalition. So he turns to Mussolini's fascists, knowing that they're kind of becoming a force that can't be ignored. He asks them to be a part of his coalition, maybe bringing them into the official democracy, can tame them and their violent ways.
They believe that they can control them because they see them rightly as vulgar, as idiotic, as narcissistic, and ignorant. They believe they can control them.
Mussolini's fascists are now an official political party that was just invited into the mainstream. And this is the next step on this path. The fascists have now been accepted, legitimized, first by the business elites, and now by the political system, the democracy. Mussolini is now a politician in parliament along with 35 other fascist politicians. But this doesn't solve anything for Italian democracy. The new political coalition falls apart almost immediately. Italy's government continues to be paralyzed by infighting. And all over the country, Mussolini's fascist fighters continue to use this dysfunction as an opportunity to take their violence to the next level. They take over entire cities, places with elected socialist leaders, occupying government buildings, chasing out the socialist city government, and imposing their own policies. Often while the police just look the other way, or even help them out in some cases. They start marching on the big cities in Italy like Bologna and Ferrara.
Doesn't concern you.
Eventually, Mussolini directs tens of thousands of his black shirts to march on the capital, Rome. Mussolini's movement, which started as a club of like 100 men in Milan, now 3.5 years later, was a force that couldn't be ignored, gathering in huge numbers just outside the capital, preparing to march on the city, daring the country's king to use his army against them. So the king sizes up his armies. He likely knows that a lot of the ranks of his army probably sympathize with the fascists. So instead of standing up to Mussolini and risking a civil war, he makes a deal with him. He invites him to become the prime minister.
Do you know what's even crazy? Even in my personal tab, it's like that. Look, let me show you. Look, this is my personal tab. I got like 3 browsers that are like this.
Anonymous sent $6 recently unarchived footage of Mussolini's black shirts breaking up a union protest.
Evil. This is evil.
You want to talk to your foreman?
You want to talk to the foreskin?
You a wise-ass motherfucker, huh?
Well, keep your mother off the streets and I won't fuck her.
Boom. That's how it went down.
He has real power now. He's addressing the parliament. And he claims, at first, that he, quote, does not intend to deviate from the Constitution. He's going to keep the democracy, he says. But over the next 4 years, he dismantles the Italian democracy from within. He says that the parliament and the entire political system are wholly unworthy to guide us. Now, not everyone's buying this. Like, he's not universally popular among the citizenry. A lot of people do like him, but a lot of people don't. But in the next election, his black shirts intimidate and suppress voters, which helps the fascists win a huge majority in the election. Soon he's censoring the press. He's shutting down newspapers. He's creating a secret police.
You abolish all liberal freedoms, you get rid of all freedom of the press, freedom of speech.
And then he abolishes all other political parties.
You have a totally alternative system of a single-party state, charismatic leader, an alternative legal system.
And then finally, he abolishes elections themselves.
This is a revolutionary rebirth. And what that means is you destroy the democratic system.
It's 1925, and Mussolini has done away with all democratic mechanisms that could be used to challenge him, and he completes the last step on the fascist path to absolute power. As the absolute ruler, he rallies the people with slogans like believe, obey, fight. We know what fight means. He's been doing that since he started his combat league.
Evil.
But these other ingredients, believe and obey, are really important too. Mussolini demands belief and submission, not just to him, but to his story. The story that he says will, quote, make Italy great, respected, and feared, restoring it to the glory of an imagined past, the Roman Empire.
What you're pointing towards is not actual history. What you're always pointing to is some kind of beautiful plastic moment.
Sarà il secolo della potenza italiana. Sarà il secolo.
God of Conquest 91 cent $3.22. Let me spoil how this ends. You know who is just like Mussolini? Trump. He is an evil fascist.
Yeah,
one
so
exclamation
true.
mark, one exclamation mark, one.
Yeah, I can tell.
L'Italia tornerà per la terza volta ad essere direttrice della civiltà umana.
And Mussolini would be the singular voice for the entire nation. And as ever, his story glorifies soldiers and the, quote, bloody sacrifice of war, and reimagines the country as a giant military, a uniform bundle of sticks, which many Italians will become willingly. And for those who don't, their descent will be violently snuffed out. Everyone must get in line. For life is conquest, warfare, at first directed at home, against his enemies, socialists, communists, liberal Democrats. But that war must eventually be brought abroad. He starts conquering parts of Africa, imposing his, quote, new civilization on others.
Evil! Evil!
Okay, so we have our first answer on what fascism is. It is a movement started by Benito Mussolini in 1919, one that glorifies violence, specifically violence against communism and socialism. It finds democracy itself as weak and contemptible, in need of not just reform, but total destruction and revolution. And it tells a story of a superior nation that has been humiliated and that needs to be restored. A mythologized past
great again.
whose decline
Wait,
they blame
MAGA.
on their enemies, and whose rebirth they promise under the rule of one charismatic, strong leader. And crucially, they gain support from mainstream elites, rich people, politicians, that allows them to gain control of the country, after which they dismantle the democracy from within, and then demand total submission to the state, which allows them to mobilize huge numbers of people with a ton of propaganda, and then begin a program of conquest and expansion. Today we call that thing fascism. And we call it fascism not because it has some like Latin root in some like philosophy or worldview, but because Benito Mussolini chose the fascio, the bundle of sticks with an axe on it, as his logo when he was making his combat club in 1919 in Milan. If somebody else had done this first, we would probably call it something different today.
Whoa!
And in fact, these ingredients that we just talked about weren't just happening in Italy. They were happening in a lot of places in Europe after World War I, especially in the countries that lost. Which brings us to another angry World War I vet. This one in Germany. Someone who was watching Mussolini very closely, admiring his rise to power, and who will one day take Mussolini's strategy to a whole new level. Before we go any further, I need to say thank you to today's sponsor who makes a video like this possible. Thank you, Storyblocks, for
Bro. He's just dropping troops. How am I not supposed to say, whoa, dude, this is evil?
Okay, enter Adolf Hitler to the story. He's about 10 years behind Mussolini on his own path to power. And remember...
Sorry, whenever I see that, it scares me.
What we talked about earlier. Germany is in a terrible place after World War I. They have been crushed militarily, politically, economically, and way worse than Italy. Germany had been one of the most advanced economies on earth before the war, and now they're in the dumps. And a lot of Germans are wondering, what happened? How do we fix this? And once again, one of the answers was maybe we need a radically new system like communism, like they're doing over in Russia.
Wait, thanks, Anonymous. Praise William.
So lots of Germans are joining communist parties and worker councils. They're striking, they're occupying factories, they're launching armed uprisings. And in some places, they're even trying to overthrow the government. But there were many Germans, especially returning humiliated war veterans, who looked the other way, feeling like they had been betrayed. Many Germans had been hearing this narrative that their civilization and even perhaps their race was superior. It was pure. And that their art and their music and their engineering are more than just a culture, that it actually comes from their bloodline. They've been hearing stories about Germanic people connected to ancient cultures, stories that are essentially a misreading of real science, notably in the relatively new field of linguistics, where researchers were discovering that many world languages share a common ancestor, a group of languages that some 19th century linguists were calling Aryan, a name that came from the Indo-Iranian people, an old culture, Iran, Aryan. And so here we are in the 19th and 20th
It's the other way around, dude.
century, and some creative Germans
funny. Why did they start calling it Iran? Why did they start calling it Iran? I don't know. At whose suggestion, do you think? I don't know. Oh, fuck, I'm trying to figure that out. Oh, power chat scammed?
Anonymous sent $3. Wes is so woke he would probably get triggered by this link.
I'll check it out and get triggered. Here I go, getting triggered again, dude. What? How does it end? What?
Hard to imagine that actually Aryan isn't just a group of languages. Aryan was an actual race, an original master race from which all great civilizations sprang. And they start to imagine that maybe this master race actually started in where Germany is today, North and Central Europe.
This guy is so obviously trying to draw parallels to Trump and MAGA. You can apply this same broad definition to Abraham Lincoln and the rise of the Union.
You can apply this to anything. They always do this where they make shit so broad that it's essentially just like Hitler drank water. You ever think about that? Like I don't know. Sorry, bros. Trump isn't Hitler. It is what it is.
And that all other cultures actually come from us. We are the origin of all good cultures, the pure starting point.
The idea was that it was actually the Germans who created ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia and ancient...
Yeah, that's stupid. It's literally the Irish. That's so stupid. That's really embarrassing that Germans thought that shit when it was clearly Irish Atlanteans. Atlantis was the original origin of where Aryans were. And then we conquered the whole world, that sort of thing. Atlantis started sinking into the ocean, and there was two main Atlantean spots that we all moved to. One of them was Ireland, and then the other one was Egypt. And then we started up this little thing, you might have heard of it, called Egypt. You know, it's no biggie.
Ancient Greece and ancient Rome.
And so they start to see all other races as impure, and some races as really impure, as we will see. Now, to be clear, these ideas have no basis in
all
real
roads lead to Dublin
evidence or science.
It does. It literally does. Okay, so he's just gonna say that. I'm gonna have to bring up Ramses II then, dude. I'm gonna have to do it to him. I'm gonna have to bring up Ramses. There's no evidence that Ramses II, that the Egyptians were Irish. Okay, then why don't you take a look at this then, huh? Why don't you take a look at this? The chief forensic scientist at the Criminal Identification Laboratory in Paris observed that the mummy had slightly wavy red hair. From this trait, combined with cranial features, he concluded that Ramses II was of Berber type, hence, according to his analysis, fair-skinned. That means pale, white. Subsequent microscopic analysis of the roots of Ramses II's hair proved that the king's hair originally was red. Bucoli confirmed that the red hair was natural, which suggests that he came from a family of redheads. Ah, shit. Uh-oh. Whoopsies.
Pull from things like linguistics, but then make a lot.
Guess he was Irish, and guess you're debunked.
Of really big leaps to create.
That's Ramses II the Great, by the way, in case you didn't know who he was. He's kind of a big deal.
A story of superiority, of racial superiority and purity, and a link to some ancient pure culture, which some Germans start to represent with a symbol, an ancient symbol that they adopt from the East. It's one that's appeared across many cultures.
Is it illegal to LARP a little bit? Is it illegal to have a little bit of LARPing and have a bit of fun with it?
It's a hooked cross, which they would call an ancient Aryan rune, an emblem of their mythical Aryan past, a symbol that they believed connected Germany back to a noble ancient race. This was intoxicating stuff for a lot of Germans, especially after the war, when soldiers came home humiliated, looking for answers, looking for an explanation on how their great economy and civilization was now on its knees. And this fantasy of the Aryan race gave them an explanation. It allowed them to believe that they actually didn't lose the war, that instead they had been stabbed in the back, a Dolchstoß in their words, a betrayal at home. Betrayal by the weak politicians in their democracy who had signed this bad peace deal. A betrayal by the communists who had sabotaged the war effort with their strikes. And the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate group that they could blame, was the impure race that was quietly pulling the strings on all of these groups, engineering the downfall of the invented Aryan race. So this is all happening around the same time that Mussolini is starting his combat club in Milan. Groups similar to Mussolini's are forming in Germany. They're fringe, radical nationalist groups.
Are they going to skip the communist civil war, do you think? They always love to do that. They love skipping the communist civil war. What do we think? Do we think it's even going to get mentioned or not? Do we think we're even going to get a mention of the whole ass civil war that the communists launched or no?
At first, they have no presence in actual politics, like in the government and the parliament. They're just groups
Because we're already, it sounds,
angry
let
men
them go.
with an obsession on an imagined nation, a focus on their current humiliation, and an appetite to commit violence. And one of those men was a 30-year-old World War I veteran, Adolf Hitler. At the end of the war, Hitler joins one of these small, obscure,
young 30-year-old, so young,
nationalist groups. He rises in the ranks of this little group to become the party leader. He implements a militia. They'd soon be named the Brown Shirts, echoing Mussolini's Black Shirts, though their official name was the Sturmabteilung, the Stormtroopers, named after the real German army.
So is this fair enough? We've skipped the communist revolution in Germany, huh? We've skipped it. Is that fair enough? Can we say that they've skipped it by now? We've just gone straight to Hitler. Anyway, Laura Rux, let's just go down the list a little bit. Here's one of the ladies who started this. Really awesome stuff. Just like really, really cool stuff. And basically we press 1 and we love him. And they're so cool, dude. And we love these communists, and they basically did nothing. They basically did nothing wrong, and they were just like sweet and cute little guys. And it's just like chilling. You just gotta like chill out and like be cool about it, because it was just like a chill little revolution that only lasted for, a little bit, and it wasn't even a big deal, dude. And it's just the fascists are just basically evil if you think about it, okay?
Assault unit in World War I. Hitler also helped.
Damn, that's just like in Star Wars.
His little party rebrand to appeal to more people, especially workers.
In ways that make it seem like they're anti-capitalists. He called himself the National Socialists.
I never understood this until now. The full name of Hitler's party was the National Socialist German Workers' Party, which sounds super socialist, eventually nicknamed the Nazis. He named it this intentionally to attract people who were interested in workers' movements, like the communists and the socialist movements that he opposed, but that he knew had wide appeal.
It was a trick. It was literally a trick, and Republicards fall for it.
Though, to be very clear, these guys were not socialist in any meaningful sense. It was just a branding play. And
just for reference, Hitler didn't invent the Nazis. He joined the party. This is like crazy. Dude, it's crazy how they have to lie. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild how they can't actually just tell the story. He didn't even invent the party. You know what I mean? Like, he just joined an already functioning party, and then he made them make him the leader, basically, after fucking around for a bit.
Soon, Hitler is overseeing a new rendition of the hooked cross, this fake Aryan symbol. His version would mimic the colors of the old German Empire, the Second Reich, a nod to the past. This symbol, this flag, this is Hitler's bundle of sticks.
Sorry, the Second Reich was, 5 years prior?
His version of restoring ancient Rome, but now with this extremist...
Restoring ancient Rome, aka 5 years previously. He was nodding to the ancient past of 5 years ago. What?
This racial superiority component. More and more men start to join his political street gang as they go hunt down his enemies. Hitler has just taken the first step on the fascist path to power. And his brown shirts look...
Was Hitler actually the one who cooked up the swastika, or is bro just lying? 1 second, let me look this up. When did the NSDAP start up the swastika? Origins and early years. No. When did the the Nazi Party formally adopted the symbol in 1920 to represent their nationalist movement. Okay. So yeah, that was before Hitler took over the NSDAP in 2020 or 1921. Sorry.
A lot like Mussolini's black shirts. Guys with
So once again, we're sort of just making shit up, but this is like vibes-based history, basically.
clubs, guns, and even grenades storming into communist and socialist meetings, smashing chairs, lighting stuff on fire, beating attendees. The big difference here is that in Italy, Mussolini's group became the kind of dominant, violent nationalist group. In Germany, there was tons of these groups that would go down, hunt down communists and socialists. But again, with the racial component, they're also focusing on minorities. And at the top of their scapegoat list, Jewish people, who start to just become synonymous with the communists, the traitors who they believe brought about Germany's decline.
Before the Nazis, the swastika was already in German Volkish nationalist movements. In post-World War I Germany, the newly established Nazi Party adopted the swastika in 1920. The Nazi Party emblem was a black swastika rotated 45 degrees on a white circle on a red background. This insignia was used on the party's flag, badge, and armband. Adolf Hitler also designed his personal standard using a black swastika sitting flat in one arm, not rotated. He cooked it. All right, he was the innovator, okay? He cooked it.
You see the parallels here with what's going on in Italy, right? Like in Italy, all of this violence and chaos shows German citizens.
He was like the guy who said drop the for the Facebook.
He picked up the check, he told Mark they'd talk again soon, and he was gone. But not before he made his biggest contribution to the company. Drop the Facebook. Just the. It's cleaner. He picked up the check, he told Mark they'd talk again.
Why the increase from the original 30%?
Okay, but you see what I'm saying here, despite the retard meme.
That the Nazis are actually more powerful than the gridlocked democratic government who can't provide order or stability for this wrecked country. Now remember, Mussolini is further down the path than Hitler. And Hitler is actually reading about Mussolini's fascist squads, seizing towns, and in
Drop the rotation, it's cleaner.
1922, when Mussolini marches on Rome and pressures the king to hand Mussolini the government, Hitler reads about this, and he wants to do the same. Hitler wants to do a Mussolini. He wants to seize the city of Munich and then march on the capital, Berlin. So he and 600 of his brown shirts surround this beer hall. This is a place where politicians would come and give speeches to huge groups of people. Hitler wants this to be the starting point.
Boom.
Tejano Groip just resubscribed.
Thanks, Tejano Groip. Pretty boom.
For his takeover of the country. He enters the hall, pulls out a gun, and shoots the ceiling. And then he yells out that the national revolution has begun. He claims that the government has fallen, which it hadn't. He's trying to rally the huge group in this beer hall to join him. And it totally fails. By the next day, his little coup attempt has collapsed, and he and his men are arrested, and he finds himself in jail, along with a few of his co-conspirators. Though he was in jail, he somehow still had access to newspapers and books and a typewriter. Meanwhile, in Italy, Mussolini is now dismantling the democracy from within, and Hitler is reading about all of this, and he resolves to not give
All right, I gotta go get a piss. I'll bring the kitten back real quick, all right? We'll have a little kitten segment.
up. He doubles down on his goal to take over the country. So in jail, he spends a lot of time writing, typing up his story. Now, there's a lot of sources that say that he actually just dictated it and didn't write it, and that he wasn't a great writer or whatever. But the most recent scholarship concludes that Hitler was writing. He was writing his ideas on race, what had caused all of Germany's problems in the first place. He types it all up into pages that would eventually become a book. A book that's part autobiography, part racial manifesto, part political blueprint for another attempt at a revolution. Mein Kampf. It's a book full of hate and conspiracy theories, and it's his story, much of it invented, a simple story that he knew would appeal to the psychology of millions of desperate people, looking for someone to blame for their misery. And for that question, of who was to blame for Germany's problem, Hitler's book had a very clear answer. It all came back to communism and the Jews. And really, Hitler concludes, the Jews, which he deems an impure race who are using communism as a weapon to undermine and ultimately destroy the German nation. All problems come back to this.
The unseen enemy is the Jew who organizes the international conspiracy, and then that story is kind of the master narrative.
And according to Hitler, to prevent that from happening again, he says that the nation would have to be purified. This purification would have to be based on blood, a shared race, and the reclaiming of the sacred land that gives it life. Blood and soil. People and race. And finally, Hitler's book diagnoses where Hitler went wrong. It's basically the only accurate part of the book, where he assesses that in trying to take over the country in that Munich beer hall, his big mistake is that he tried to jump from here to here, using violence, but without gaining that mainstream acceptance from business elites and from the democracy that Mussolini had done. Violence alone, he now sees, wouldn't be enough to take power. So his book outlines a strategy for how he'll do it next time. Not a forced takeover, but in his words, a, quote, determined cooperation between brute force and political aims wisely chosen. So even though Hitler hates democracy, he now understands that he must use the democracy to rise to power so that he can destroy it from within. In other words, Hitler is going to have to succeed in politics.
Fascism never cares about democracy, but is willing to use it in order to destroy it.
He gets out of jail in late 1924, and instead of trying another coup, he spends the next few years rebuilding the Nazi Party as a legal, competitive political machine. Remember, he needs to move from here to here, which means winning votes. He runs his party in the 1928 election. The Germans vote, and nope, the Nazis barely get any votes. But he's undeterred. He continues spreading his message of racial superiority and the backstabbing by the Jews. He'll try again in 2 years in the next election. And this is when something happens that will help him out. 1929 just hit. Financial markets around the world crash. An economic depression sweeps around the world. And Germany, which was already not doing great, as we talked about, is hit harder than pretty much any other country. Soon, 1 in 3 Germans are...
What? He crawled underneath my monitor instantly. Give me a second. Oh, bro, where are you going? Don't hide, please. No. He's in the closet. No, come back. I'm nice. Come back. Please get out of the closet. Oh, there's so much shit back here, dude. Come here. I got you. Ah. Come on. Oh, you little guy. Oh! Bro. Don't tell him to run. Ugh. Okay, don't flee me. Stop. No, he's fleeing again. Come here. The fascism can't hurt you, okay? Come here. Get up here. The people need to see you. The people have been demanding you. Stop. Here he is. Here's the little guy. It's him. The one that the people need to see. They're demanding. He is a bit camera shy. Oh. He's... Come here. You're okay. He's really on a little quest. He wants to figure it out. Kind of likes this. He's figuring it out. Don't. Oh, what happened to me? He turned me off. One sec. He turned it off. He says he will not be exploited for profit. He refuses to be exploited for profit. All right, ladies and germs. Come on, sit on my lap. Dude, stop. All right. He doesn't really want to. Here he is. He's a little guy. All right, I gotta go take him back. Bro's freaking out.
Are out of work.
The fascists in Germany appealed to that suffering, basically whipping up a working class through xenophobia, through racism, saying to that working class, I feel your suffering, I see it, I'm going to relieve it, and you join me in this fascist project.
It was a powerful rallying cry. And indeed, the next year, 1930, there's an election, and more people turn out to vote for the Nazi Party. They're buying into his message. He's getting closer to this step. And if you listen to his campaign speeches during this time, it's pretty nuts. This guy is openly stating his intention of dismantling democracy and the party system if he gets power. Listen to this.
Sich hier etwas ganz anderes handelt, als eine gewöhnliche politische parlamentarische Partei. Ich habe mir ein Ziel gesteckt, nämlich die 30 Parteien aus Deutschland hinauszufegen.
He's calling for revolution, which people more and more want, but he's mixing in racial superiority and the easy scapegoat of Jews and communists. All of this found a wider audience during the Depression, and look what happens in the next election. The Nazi Party gets more votes than any other party. Not quite a majority that would have given him control over the government, but this is looking like acceptance. Not just by the political machine, but by the people. But wait, back to that graph. Look who else is getting
Hello. All right, sorry. Bro was he was sleeping. I picked him up. He wasn't even sleeping. He was just laying there chillaxing in his little bed, and I picked his ass up, and then he really wanted to go back. He was pissed. He was like, dude, I was about to take a nap, dog, and now you're exploiting me. You're exploiting me for money now? This is bullshit. But here we are. All right, there he is. Okay, you saw him. You're happy.
The communists.
The communists!
And just like in Italy, many of the top elites in business and politics don't like the communists.
Why would they? Oh, man. Why do these elites hate the communists for no reason? It's not like they did any sort of, revolution or something, dude. Oh, he did a base Hitler speech? One sec, check.
This guy is openly stating his intention of dismantling democracy and the party system if he gets power. Listen to this.
Sich hier etwas ganz anderes handelt, als eine gewöhnliche politische parlamentarische Partei.
I like cat.
Wait, we like cat.
Ich habe mir ein Ziel gesteckt, nämlich die 30 Parteien aus Deutschland hinauszufegen.
Yeah, we were worried about him because we got... Sorry, kitten segment. We got the other one, his sister. We got almost a month ago now. Wow. We got her a month ago, and we had her for a while, and then we gave her away to a cat adoption clinic, and because we had to take it to the vet a bunch of times beforehand, and so we did that, and then and because it was so fucked up out, there's no way to get him, and he's really clever is the problem. So we kept setting up the fucking cat catching traps. Gang Stalker did. She kept setting up the cat catching traps, and I don't know what it is about him. This one that we just got, but he is like a little fucking genius. Okay, where the other one was an acrobat. That one was really capable of jumping around and attacking and clawing and very nimble and all of that stuff. This cat, the unknown Noir or whatever, we were calling the other one Scout because of that. But this one, the one that we have currently, we haven't given to the adoption place yet. he's really high IQ is the problem. So he kept going into the trap and then not turning off or not triggering the trap, right? He somehow figured out how the trap worked, and he would literally with his paw, he would drag the fucking can of food that we had, he would drag it out of the thing and then like pick it up in his mouth and bring it underneath the little like shitty trailer that he was living under. And he did that like 5 times. He kept doing it. He kept outsmarting the trap. But we literally just like yesterday, 2 days ago, we got lucky, and bro accidentally stepped on the trap, and we cooked his ass. We got him now. But now that we got him, he's not like fighting back. He's not like, he's accepted that he's like a cute and sweet little guy now, pretty immediately. So we're good. We're good. But I don't know, maybe this is all part of his master plan to trick us into thinking that everything's okay, and then he's gonna steal our fucking cat food and he's gonna get out of here. Who knows, dude?
He's calling for revolution, which people more and more want.
Is it like a bear trap? No, it's like what is it? It's like one of these. One sec. It's like this, right? And then there's like a thing here that's like held up by a spring, right? And then like this is open, and then you can walk into the tunnel, and all of this is like caged in, but we'd have like the food here, right? Like a tuna, right? And then there's like a little trap sensor here that if you step on it and it goes across the width, if you step on it, it triggers this, and then this like slams down and closes you in. And he would just like come in and he'd be like, burr, 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 burr. He'd be like, hi, I'm a little guy. He. One sec, sorry. I'm trying to do this. He'd be like, he, I'm a little guy. And he'd come in the trap, and then he'd carefully step over the fucking, the trigger. And then he'd go, bee. And then he'd take the tuna and he'd fuck off right out of there, dude. And he did that like 5 times. We couldn't get him in. Or he would like come up to the side, and he would do this too. He'd come up to the side and he'd hit it with his little paw, and he'd like push it from outside of the trap. And it was so annoying because we caught like one of the trailer park people's. We caught one of their cats like 5 times too. So this was a whole fucking thing. We caught this bastarding orange cat. This is real. We caught this bastarding orange cat like fucking 4 times, who literally like was as dumb as a sack of rocks. Dude never learned his lesson. Or I think he did learn his lesson, which is that like we didn't care about him, so he could just come in and eat the food, and then we'd just let bro go. And he was like, all right. Oh yeah, here's a picture of what we were using. This is it. Bruh. This is a picture of it. Yeah, that's what we had. So yeah, he'd step over this every time. He'd find a way to get past it. Anyway.
But he's mixing in racial superiority and the easy scapegoat of Jews and communists. All of this found a wider audience.
And when we used kibble, like, it's so crazy, but when we use kibble, like if we had kibble in the back here, he'd literally like whoopsies. He'd literally like pull the fucking kibble over to the side, and he'd like just start eating it through the thing. He was a little goblin. He was a genius. But we've got him, and he is currently perhaps scheming.
During the Depression, and look what happens in the next election. The Nazi Party gets more votes than any other party. Not quite a majority that would have given him control over the government, but this is looking like acceptable.
But he's so cute. He's so cute. He's picked me as like his favorite guy, like clearly. Every time I walk into the bathroom that we're keeping him in, bro will like instantly come up to me, and he'll just like lean against my leg, like against my calf, and he'll start purring. And he's like, yeah, that's right, we're squatted up. He's like, I'm with this guy. I'm with this big giant motherfucker. It's me and him. We're here together. So.
Not just by the political machine, but by the people. But wait, back to that graph. Look who else.
Do you have to give him away? Well, I tried to introduce him to Edgar today, and Edgar is like such an incel. It's crazy. He's like a total chud. Edgar is just like a fucking lunatic, okay? is the problem. Edgar was like hissing at him. He was pissed the whole time, just looking at him. He was growling, yowling. I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. The thing is, we also have Palomi, right, which is his mom, because we rescued the whole little family. We already gave away the sister, which I felt bad about. It's I'm in like one of these cooked situations where I like or not me, Gangstalker like rescued. It was like all her too. She's like so sweet. She can't like see animals in peril and not do it. I've told you the stories about her rescuing animals from Mexicans already, but so we've rescued this whole little family of cats, and now I'm like cooked because it's really hard to give them away, you know, but equally I don't really want to have 4 fucking cats. And Edgar like hates all of them because he's an incel. Like it doesn't seem like Edgar wants to be the cat that stepped up. You know, he doesn't want to be a step cat dad. He's like a total incel. He demands to be the king of the house and to be the only one who gets any of the attention. He's been growling at Pomni, the mom, the single mother, and she's so sweet too. She's just like an absolute submissive baby. You know, you can do anything to her. You can pick her up and she just like sort of goes limp and lets you do whatever. You know, she like if you pet her, she'll just like instantly roll over. Or not Pomni. What is it? It's Palomi. See, and that's the problem too. Is I always call her Pomni. But you know, she's so sweet, and like we introduced Edgar to her, and he was having incel rage, and he was growling at her, and she just got like really scared, and she laid down, and she got really scared. And the funny thing is that she could probably really fuck up Edgar, because Edgar, he's a rescue too, but he's old now. He's like 16. He doesn't have any claws. He's been declawed, and he's got 9 fucking teeth. You know, so like. So like bro really isn't in fighting shape anymore, you know, so like, but Edgar really talks some mean shit, and Palomi is fucking terrified of him, because bro just has incel rage every time he sees her and starts fucking dropping slurs and shit and catties. He's fucking little guys, dude.
Getting a lot of votes. The communists.
Why is he declawed? It was from before I had him.
And just like in Italy, many of the top elites in business and politics don't like the communists. The communists promise to come for their wealth and their power.
I've only ever had rescue cats. I've only ever had rescue cats. Edgar's a rescue. The cats that we have right now, we rescued. My cats even before were rescues. My childhood cat was Army Kitty. She was like a woods cat out in Massachusetts. There was 2 cats, 2 like woods cats. One of them came up and I tried petting it, and I was like 5 years old and I was petting this little cat. It was a gray one. And I remember it fucking scratched me. It scratched me all over my arm. And then I was like freaking out and screaming, and I ran back to the house, and the cat was like chasing me straight up, and my dad had to come over with a fucking garden hose and he sprayed the cat and it fucked off back into the woods. And then the next day, Army Kitty, who was a calico, she came over, and I tried it again because I hadn't learned my lesson. I tried petting her and she was chill with me, so we brought her in, and that was my childhood cat. Anyway, but yeah,
their land. And who's
I named her Army Kitty because she had like camo. She had like camouflage on her, and she came out of the woods, dude.
Communists? Well, Hitler is nothing if not anti-communist. So Germany's elected leaders do almost exactly what Italy's leaders did in this moment, even though they're.
And she was hardcore too. She'd because she was like a part-time outdoor cat, and she would go outdoors and she would fucking raise ruckus, dude. She'd bring birds back all the time. She was a killer, all right? She was a straight up slaughterer, okay? She'd bring birds back like every week. She'd bring squirrels back. She'd bring anything down, okay?
A little bit leery of Hitler, they let him in fully. They let him become the chancellor, the prime minister, basically. Thinking that they could maybe use Hitler to keep the communists down while also keeping some of his crazier revolutionary ideas at bay.
My mom hated it, but I'd press one to her. You know, I don't know. I've always been like that. Is that like an autism trait? Like Edgar too. Edgar, we used to let him out into the garage all the time, and he would torment lizards and anything that he could find in there, right? And I would stop him. Don't get me wrong. I would stop him because he'd go in there and he'd like find a lizard and he'd track that bastard down and he'd step on it and he'd like sit down on top of it and he'd just be like chilling and he'd let it go and then he'd chase it down again. And I'd like go in there and have a cigarette or whatever, and bro would literally just be fucking with a lizard and the lizard's tail would be like completely severed and bro would just be fucking around with it and I'd save the lizard from him. But you know, then I'd go feed him a treat because he was doing good, you know? I don't know. I like to press one when I see that type of behavior. I like it when my animals are like killers, you know, when they're out there. Bear, my dog, he killed like 3 rattlesnakes. That was scary though, because we didn't know the first time he got bit by a rattlesnake. The first time he got bit, we didn't know that bro was like immune to rattlesnake venom. We thought bro was cooked. But he just slept for like 3 straight days and then he woke up and he was normal. But yeah, he killed like 3 of them. In his lifetime. So
even though we're gonna quote form a government under the leadership of Hitler.
Yeah, he was a Labrador Retriever, a black lab, and apparently they're good. You know, they don't give a fuck about rattlesnakes. They get bit by rattlesnakes, and apparently they just need to sleep it off. I remember, bro, he like went into like a fucking coma for 3 days. He literally just like laid down, like completely zonked out of his fucking mind. You know, like bro just like dropped some fentanyl, and he was zonked out for 3 straight days, and then he just like got up and he was like, anyway, you see me kill that fucking rattlesnake, gay ass piece of shit.
We are going to keep, quote, the utmost restriction on this guy and his party, making sure that he governs, quote, within the framework of the Constitution. He's got some crazy ideas, but we've got him under control. Boy, that sounds familiar. So now it's January 1933, and Hitler is in full-blown mainstream power, and from here, things start to move fast. Less than a month later, somebody sets fire to Germany's parliament building.
Whoa.
And the man found at the scene of the crime is a communist.
He uses that to say, we have a state of emergency.
State of emergency. Very powerful tool. Within days, he suspends the Constitution.
And from then on, entire Nazi regime was based on the suspension of all liberal democratic laws and freedoms.
Freedom of expression, freedom of the press, protections from search and seizures, all suspended. Within months, he's abolished all other political parties, something
And it's not like the communists did revolutions in Germany or anything, so it's like, you know, it just really came out of nowhere. It's just weak justification.
he said he was gonna do. It's 1934, and Hitler has just followed Mussolini's strategy and achieved absolute power.
Whoa!
Die Partei wird für alle Zukunft die politische Führungsauslese des deutschen Volkes sein. Das Ziel aber muss sein, alle anständigen Deutschen werden Nationalsozialisten. Die Partei ist Hitler. Hitler aber ist Deutschland, wie Deutschland Hitler ist. Hitler siegt! Siegt!
Ah, this is scary. Okay, but that's cool as fuck, though. All right, but you have to admit that's cool as fuck, though. Yo, but seriously, though, you're really gonna use Triumph of the Will to make him look bad?
And those old myths, those racial fantasies about the Aryan race, become official policy of the state. And, just like Mussolini, Hitler begins his war against the people he had been planning for years to purge from society. Communists, socialists, Roma, disabled people, homeless people, sex workers, queer people, and above all, Jews.
No!
What the Nazis did in their story about the Jews was that they assigned to the Jews everything that they themselves were doing. We were
Oh, I see. They're like scapegoating them.
only responding to things which Jews have already done. We're the victims, and all we're doing is responding. So yeah, maybe we want to control the world, but that's because the Jews already control the world. Maybe we use propaganda, but that's because Jewish propaganda has already totally dominated the world information space.
By 1935, he strips any German Jew of citizenship, strips them of their rights. And then in 1938, he unleashes his armed gangs on them. They destroy hundreds of synagogues, thousands of Jewish shops and businesses smashed and burned, 30,000 Jewish men arrested and sent to camps. Beaten, terrorized, their property stolen. World War II hasn't started yet. Hitler is just crushing any group he opposes from within. And once complete, by the late 30s, he turns his view outward.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II.
This country is at war with Germany.
Hitler and his now ally Mussolini launch wars of conquest that devastate much of Europe. And as a part of those wars, Hitler implements a series of systematic mass murder campaigns, killing about 6 million
I looked up that Timothy Snyder guy, and he's not Jewish, but his wife is.
Jews, millions of Poles, Slavs, Roma, and other civilians that he marks as racially impure or biologically inferior.
That's evil. So is this like Trump or what? They threw in the footage of the American bombers destroying German infrastructure there to. Well, sorry, maybe I'm not willing to go as far as this video, but it's weird that it goes from German bombers or American bombers destroying German infrastructure to like the concentration camps immediately. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be understanding from that implication there.
So it's easy to lose yourself in this story, especially at this point in the chronology. But I want to now summarize what we can learn from the rise of these two men, these two regimes, what it tells us about what fascism is.
Evil.
Both of these men ended up applying a weirdly similar approach to gaining power. Both of them started with small groups that glorify.
You know, I've really broadened the shit out of the narratives, and now they kind of seem similar. Thoughts? I mean, they are similar, obviously, but it's so broad. It's just the most broad definitions of everything ever.
Violence against political enemies.
And we also completely ignored the antagonists. We did not inspect whether or not their claims are valid. We sort of just implied that they're lying about everything, you know?
Them created narratives that sold a mythologized past and blamed their enemies.
Mythologized past of Germany. Sorry, just to describe how broad we're getting with this. The mythologized past of Italy is the Roman Empire. The mythologized past of Germany was the Second Reich, which was 5 years prior, or realistic 2 years prior. But you know, it's the same difference, really.
Enemies for the loss of that mythical past. Both of them promised a rebirth of their superior nation under the leadership of a singular, charismatic, powerful man. Both of them eventually got invited into the mainstream of a democratic system by positioning themselves against the forces that scare rich people. Communism, socialism. And both vehemently called for the end of democracy in any form, even while they used democracy to gain power. And once in power, both dismantled democracy from within so that no one could challenge them, creating a government and a society and a press run entirely by the glorified leader, which he then used to flood his people with propaganda and fear, getting them to act like a giant army that the leader could mobilize first at home, then abroad in wars of conquest, including an industrial-scale genocide in the case of Hitler. Okay, now this is not...
So, like, the thing is as well, I feel like every single country has a mythologized past, no matter how gay and democratic and retarded they are. Okay? You know, and like, that's sort of just like part of the human condition, but they always like to throw it in as like one of these key signs of fascism is having a mythologized past that like faggy Democrat, libtard, and brown people don't agree with, you know? Like name any country, like China, okay? What is China's mythologized past? China mythologizes the Taiping Kingdom, all right, which is the heavenly kingdom of God, right? Like, this is insanity. They say that they were proto-communists. You know, they have a mythologized past too. Everybody has a mythologized past because they all want to believe that there is this like epic story. They want to believe in teleology. They want to believe in a greater purpose. That's called being a human fucking being, you know? But it's only really an issue when that mythologized past is like towards white people's heritage, white people's blood, white people's greatness, nationalism, you know? It's only an issue then. When the mythologized past is that America is a country of immigrants and, you know, and black people built this country with the immigrants who came in. Immigrants and black slaves built this country up, and we overcame racism, and we overcame you know, the civil rights, and now we're gay and we're working towards a vision of a progressive future. Like, that's okay to mythologize that past. But when you're mythologizing the past to, well, it's a nation of European immigrants of a particular blood who formed a new race of Europeans called American, who expanded their borders from sea to shining sea, you know, like, that's like a bad past that we're not allowed to like, you know? Anyway.
The list that defines fascism. There is no the list. But after being really deep in the source code of this history, this is the list that we believe summarizes the defining features of fascism. But now the hard part. The part that's up to interpretation that everyone watching is going to have a slightly different read.
Yeah, or the God gave us ownership of this land 2,000 years ago mythology.
What happens when we apply this list to today? After decades of more and more countries becoming liberal democracies, meaning democracies that prioritize individual rights and try to ensure that everybody gets treated equally by the law, the world has seen a reversal. There is a decline in liberal democracies around the world. That's what this chart is showing.
What's that, 40 out of 180 countries? Nice.
Fresh concerns about the restriction of rights in Hungary.
Israeli lawmakers declaring that only Jews hold the right to self-determination.
Judges say Poland's judicial independence is being violated.
Modi has been heavy-handed with the Indian media and voices of dissent.
Pair that with the uptake of the visibility of communities who openly embrace the fascism of Mussolini and Hitler.
Hundreds of men in Rome making a fascist salute.
Openly praising Adolf Hitler, making celebratory jokes about gas chambers.
Young white men.
I was there!
Taken together, you start to understand the increase in serious people sounding the alarm bell that this is maybe the return of fascism of some form. using it not just as the generic insult, but actually saying that we're like in some version of the 1930s. They're citing modern events
Angry anti-Muslim mob tore through the town.
that are concerning to them,
Greenland should be part of the United States.
that they say meet the criteria of fascism.
Police, hands up!
Like the rise of militia groups, vigilantes, government death squads, violent ultra-nationalist groups, strongman leaders who invoke an idealized past, promising to make their nation great once more. Massive displays of loyalty and support
In
for
China,
the leader and the regime.
we're using one tick box for the whole planet, and extremely broad and vague checks. Okay, that's cool.
And of course, blaming the country's problems on some kind of outsider, like radical socialists and communists,
Foreign Christian-hating communists, Marxists, and socialists.
immigrants,
Yes, I use the word invasion.
Fake fugitives, freeloaders, criminals,
rapist illegal migrants.
We're even seeing the first expansionist ground war happening on the European continent since World War II.
a full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Okay, so we have this list, but a lot of this stuff is in the eye of the beholder. Like, you might see this and say, there are definitely regimes and movements that are doing all of these things today. Or I see some elements of this, but no country checks all of the boxes like Hitler and Mussolini did, which either means there's no fascism, or it means that the checklist by itself has a sort of limited usefulness. Can it be fascism unless it checks all the boxes? Or are some of these so dire and scary that you check one or a couple of these and that's fascism?
Or maybe that there's like, I don't know, like a definition of fascism that isn't even close to anything that's happening right now. You're just scared of nationalism and white people.
I asked the experts on this, and it turns out...
What does Finkelstein have to say about this?
They all have slightly different answers, and I think we can learn a lot by understanding each one. First, Federico Finkelstein, who says that what we're seeing today isn't fully fascism, but it's close, but that we're still missing some really key pieces.
There is no fascism without dictatorship. The destruction of democracy is central to what fascist politics. What the fascists did is to use democratic means to destroy democracy from within.
Finkelstein says that in order for it to be fascism, it has to oppose not just communism, but democracy itself. It might play by the rules of a democratic system at first, but ultimately...
But Trump said he wanted to be a dictator for a day. Whoa, 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 whoa. He said that the Constitution's holding him back, so that basically ticks it.
Fascism wants to destroy democracy, destroy votes and parliaments. And in most of the places that critics use the F word to describe, these nationalist leaders still operate within some kind of democratic system, even if it's just in name.
Ez azt mutatja, hogy a magyar demokrácia köszöni szépen jól van, él, virul.
We will not forget our Constitution.
Finkelstein's point is that until these leaders start calling for the end of voting and constitutions, their regimes remain here, not here. And thus, they aren't fascist yet.
I think there is a fascist risk. They are constantly at the verge of turning democracy into dictatorship.
And this is why Finkelstein's book is called Wannabe Fascists. Because it describes leaders who have
Made sure to shill the book. That's why they call him Finkelstein.
Some of this path of the interwar fascists that we've talked about, but they haven't gone all the way, even if they maybe want to. Fascism, according to him, takes place only over here, when democracy ends fully.
Fascism wanted to destroy democracy from within in order to create an extremely racist and totalitarian dictatorship.
Meanwhile, Roger Griffin, one of the top experts in the world on fascism, also said...
seems like it's just repeated her fascism level scholarship.
Yeah, no, this is just like retard shit. This is just like 4 dumb pieces of shit who are idiots. The point of this video is that white people are scary and nationalist white people are fascists, basically.
Says that until democracy is totally wiped out, it's not fascism. Where he disagrees with Finkelstein is that he thinks we should move away from this word altogether, that the F word is not actually useful for today's nationalist regimes.
Because we're so obsessed with the rise of fascism, we are not looking at what is the novelty of what's happening. What I believe you're seeing is not the rise of fascism, the return of fascism, but the rise of illiberal democracy. Illiberal democracy.
Griffin argues that democracy and fascism aren't the only two options here, that there's a third bad thing that we can be, where we don't trip the fascism alarm fully because we still have democracies with parliaments and votes, but leaders, instead of destroying democracy from within, they distort them. They get rid of their liberal features. And by the way, quick side note, liberal is a kind of confusing word. Here in the United States, we use liberal to describe a left of center political leaning that supports things like social programs, gun control, and higher taxes for the wealthy. But in this case, I mean liberal in the way that it was used in like the 1800s and is used by political scientists today. Liberal, like liberty, like governments that ensure individual rights and freedoms, equal protections for everyone, regardless of your group, under the law. You can have a system where there are votes and a parliament and representation, but don't have the liberal features.
91 cent, $3.29 according to this definition.
Yeah.
Joseph Stalin and the leaders of the Soviet Union.
They are.
You know, the communist superpower.
No.
Were fascist.
They were fascist. Everyone was a fascist, dude. Okay, Julius Caesar, fascist. You know, Pol Pot, fascist. You know, Charlemagne, fascist. King George III, fascist. They're all fascists, basically. Everyone is a fascist, and you know, basically that's what it's all about. Because they all have a mythologized past, and they use violence, and they have power, and you know, basically they have an out group that they dislike, and you know, so it's all fascism all the way. My dad, fascist.
That a liberal democracy has. And Roger Griffin says that this is the thing we
don't even worry about the fact that like fascism is an actual like political ideology or anything. It's basically just when you're like mean and white. When you're mean and white, that's really the only tick marks that we really need is if you're mean and white, then that makes you a fascist basically. And by mean, the tick box is for what it is to be mean. Sorry, let me write this down so that it's official. All right, so to be a fascist, you have to be mean. Whoopsies, fucked up my M there. Mean, and you have to be white. Okay. And basically, Trump ticks both those boxes, unfortunately. Okay, boom, boom. We hate to see it, but you gotta, you know, it's true. It's true. Bro. There we go. Here's some real fascist music. All right, and now what does white mean? What is white? How do you be white? Or how do you be mean? You basically, have to be not woke, and not hate white people. Okay, so we got this pretty set up. Do you guys understand? So that's the definition of fascism, basically, that we got. So basically, that's the whole point of this fucking hour-long bastarding video, dude. It's to sleep. We're stressed out. To the good old days. Now we're stressed out. Okay.
We should be worried about. That calling it fascism takes our eye off the ball of this new thing, illiberal democracy, where these nationalist leaders are distorting democratic systems to consolidate power, making societies less equal, while still running it like a democracy.
What we have got are new forms of nationalism which are contained within democracy instead of calling for the replacement of democracy.
This was surprising to me. When I started researching this story, I was under the impression that like all the experts agreed that fascism was back in some form.
Wow.
But they don't.
We are not there yet.
That is, until you talk to some other experts who say that it is fascism.
The reason we need to use that term is behind it is a concept that helps us understand what is going on right now in the third decade of the 21st century. We need to see that history does not repeat itself in the same conditions and the exact same circumstances.
This camp says that our checklists are a distraction, that we're reading too much into the specifics of the 1930s.
You don't need all of that in order to have fascist control and push forward with a fascist project.
But William Robinson says that if you do want a checklist, the most important item on it is actually this one, where ultra-nationalists become accepted into the mainstream by the elites, like Mussolini and Hitler were. This step, where the people in power decide that these nationalist groups that tolerate violence are useful to them.
That's a form of trying to re-legitimate the system.
This view says that in order for fascism to actually succeed, it needs to bring together a specific alliance, a kind of triangulation. First, a vulnerable receptive population.
This triangulation then brings together the fascist project with a mass social base. But the third dimension...
So basically, when America became fascist was when all of the mob peasants who didn't like paying taxes, when they started getting together with the colonial elites, that's when fascism happened, basically. It's when Ben Franklin
Big
came
Johnson
down to
sent
Samuel
$3 Beardson was logging you earlier while playing Resident Evil, saying you'd be too scared and scream the whole time if you played the game. He called you a scaredy cat. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, you know, fuck him, you know, basically. He's not even a real gamer, so I don't really care what he has to say. And he'd never say that to my face, because he's a foot shorter than me, so he wouldn't reach. He'd need a stepladder to say it to my face. What was I saying? So basically, whenever Samuel Adams and John Hancock, when they started talking with Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, the elites, the colonial elites, that's when fascism started happening in America back in 1760s, dude.
Is the ruling class. It controls the economy. You see when Trump gets inaugurated for his second term, you see behind him are all of the big tech oligarchs. Right behind him, the capital class in the United States have now come on board.
And finally, you have a view that says that the most important items on this list are these. It's the way the leader talks, the way that they talk about the past and the future.
What fascism does is it promises a return to an order. And the order, of course, didn't actually ever historically exist. You're creating this sort of tabula rasa, this smooth surface on which the fascist story of we were always innocent can then function.
For people like Snyder, fascism starts when politics stops being about the future and starts to become about a mythic story of a glorious past, a humiliated nation, and a leader who promises rebirth.
If we could just somehow get the enemy off our screen, off our...
Fascism starts when you notice what we've done to you, basically. Is another way of saying that. Fascism basically starts when you notice that we've been letting 1 million fucking immigrants into the country every single year, and we never nobody ever voted for it, basically. And that fascism is when you notice that the standard of living has dropped significantly.
Out of our country, then there would be this harmony that would come back. There will be love, there'll be prosperity, there'll be happiness, there won't be conflict anymore because conflict was always brought by the outsider.
And listen, every one of these experts has a different read.
I don't see any major movement in the West that is trying to replace democracy with a totally different system.
You can't say that because Hitler came to power in Germany and then almost immediately suspended any and all democracy and just became a dictatorship.
Man, you got a weird accent. What country is that accent from?
Overnight, therefore, any fascist project has to follow that same model. There's not one road to fascism.
Probably the same country Ben Shapiro came from.
When you use the list mechanism, you're missing a kind of the historical sensibility you need to actually recognize that thing for what it is. And that is because what we want to do is we look for the rational core. In my view, that has not proven to be predictive. More predictive would be to look for the fight, the struggle, the enemy, and to dwell on that.
And you're seeing why the experts disagree here. They disagree on how much we should read into the 1930s, how much the word fascism actually matters.
Obviously, 21st century fascism is not going to look like 20th century fascism, but it's going to have that underlying essence in common with the 20th century variant.
There are important fascist elements here, and it will be problematic to deny that there are connections to fascism.
But if we get too obsessed with fascism, it takes attention away from actually looking carefully at what is happening to democracy. Illiberal democracy, whatever we call it, is in many ways more dangerous than fascism.
Illiberal democracy, I think, is inaccurate, but because it's inaccurate, it's sort of pacifying. If you think that it is just like illiberal democracy, then you can say, oh, we'll have another election and maybe the liberals will win next time, right?
The question of what is a fascist,
like they did previously, right?
cannot be answered in simple terms.
I entered this video really wanting clarity on is today fascism or not. Instead, what I have after this long journey are a series of patterns. Glorified violence, elites who think violent groups can solve their problems, the destruction of a democracy, a myth, a lie, a fake history, a fake promised future. So I guess I now know what fascism isn't. It's not any politics that I don't like. Instead, it's a kind of method, a kind of view on power. Fascism instantly conjures the worst of human cruelty, how far we can fall under the right circumstances. In that way, it's a valuable reminder, a warning. But that same weight also makes it hard and difficult to actually be useful. It ends conversations as often as it starts them. Still...
Yeah, dude, I'm literally not even trying to be biased, but like unironically, this is more applicable to the American left than it is to the American right. Like, just trying to be, as a fascist. As a fascist, this is literally more applicable to the American left and what Antifa is doing than to the right. And it's like literally not even close. They have their revisionist Project 1619. They have, history. They have their, vision for the future. They have their violent use of force to subvert public mandate. They have the elites coupling with them and on their side and actively funding them. It's like, it's them and BLM. It's BLM and Antifa are fascists is what I got from this video, you fucking limp-wristed faggot.
There are a few things I feel sure about after going through this.
That white people are evil and nationalism is evil.
History. Domination, violence.
Those are the real two tick marks. Are you nationalist and are you white? And if those two are ticked, then it's fascism 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000.
Hierarchy. Those aren't the exception in human history. They're actually the norm.
Whoa.
For most of our existence, the way that we've organized ourselves in large groups.
Democracy is a sacred, precious thing, and it's fragile, and we need to press one to black people or else it's all gonna go away. Damn, I never thought about it like that before, shit.
Has relied on force and fear and inequality. And we'd be foolish to think that the ugly instincts of control and submission and vengeance, that those things are just gonna go away. So when we study fascism, what we're really seeing is those old, ugly instincts coming through. We'd be naive to think that we're beyond it, that we're too smart or too modern to fall into those same patterns of fear and control. We're not immune. We never have been.
Whoa.
This video isn't the final word on
I'm
fascism.
Scared.
It's just where my understanding starts. The people I talked to for this story don't even agree.
Europilled just gifted 2
Praise
subscriptions
one.
on Kick.
Boom, boom, Europilled, boom.
But there is one area that most of them did agree, which is that we don't have to wait for it to be 1933 again to notice that something is happening. Because the point of understanding fascism isn't to win arguments or to come up with some ultimate definition that will solve all of our questions. It's to recognize the patterns, to point them out,
I'm a pattern noticer
and to do
myself.
something about it while we still have options.
Whoa. It's so awesome, dude. I love that. One of your best videos ever. Wow. People are loving it. People are loving it. Okay.